Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire, while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
Welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Well, today I have a great guest for you. You know what? I couldn't say it any better than this, and I'm not being mean. This is actually how he describes himself. A husky, ginger comedian, vegan, son of a pig farmer who set out to lose 100 pounds and ran one of the world's most difficult 100-mile ultramarathons. I'm going to use all three of his names because he does it. Jeffrey James Binney, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
That was probably one of my more favorite entrances. I couldn't have written it myself any better.
Well, thank you.
So, it's so awesome to, we've kind of connected before with Endurance Zone because you have this amazing movie that you did. And it's really, I want to kind of dive into all of the parts of the story, kind of when you started that journey to now. But let's go back to really what was that? What made you flip that switch? What made you change to be able to go, I'm sitting on a couch and I'm sitting at the hospital with your mom to doing this 100-mile run? What was that change?
Yeah, well, I had been overweight and generally non-athletic my entire life. And I found myself at the age of 30, like you said, living essentially in an ICU waiting room while my mom was, we'd later realize was the end of her time with us. And heart disease is what took her away. And, there's really no question about why she was suffering from heart disease. She had been overweight her entire life. And, there's no better motivator
right
than impending death, right?
Right.
Premature death. And I just decided to take the bull by the horns. I was desperate to latch on to anything that could help me avoid finding myself, in the same spot as her. And in the waiting room, they had a subscription to Trail Runner magazine, and I just kept picking them up over and over. All years worth of Trail Runner magazines were sitting there. They looked like they had never been touched, but I read them all, and I just was instantly hooked. I grew up on a pig farm when I was a little kid, and I wasn't athletic, or at least I didn't consider myself athletic. I was not a proper athlete, but I realized that I did spend all day outside playing. And I realized that trail running for me tapped into that playful little kid outside. And that was immediately what first hooked me. I kind of we had a pretty bad day of bad news in the hospital. And I, in a fit of desperation, went out and bought some shoes and went to a state park and went for a run. And the stress relief, I keep saying this getting into running was the best therapy that I could have possibly found. But on top of that, I just felt like a little kid, like jumping over logs and things. The amount of playfulness and the fact that nobody was there watching my fat jiggle or timing me. I was just instantly hooked. So that's kind of the long answer. You ask a very simple question, but that's how I got started.
But I love that. And in your LinkedIn profile, or actually if you want to go and find out more about Jeffrey James Binney, you can go to his website. I just had it in front of me, jjb.life, and there you have the word athlete in quotes. Why'd you do that?
Well, because it took me years to consider myself an athlete, years of running and ultra running even, because I think it was just a mindset, all my own. You know, I've never, ever. I think that yet another reason why I'm so drawn to the trail running and ultra running community is I have never once been put down, told I didn't belong, judged for being chubby. Not a single time. But there was what was right before my first 100-miler, a few weeks before I left to go do Leadville 100, I went to the doctor. I just wanted to do, I had lost 100 pounds. I just wanted to make sure that I was doing this safely and that it was a good, still a good idea. And so this was just the kind of final sign off, thumbs up. Right. Yes, go run 100 miles.
Hopefully not the final sign off.
Final doctor health sign off. How about
the
that?
The approval.
Yeah, the approval. And so I went, and again, my mom struggled with heart disease for 17 years. So saying that I have a fairly substantial amount of paranoia around my heart health would be an understatement. Right. And I was sitting in the waiting room, or in the doctor's room, and he was doing all the normal exam stuff, and he got to my heart. And he listened, and he moved the stethoscope and listened again, and kind of did a confused dog head tilt, moved it and listened again. And he was like, I'll be right back. And I just spiraled very quickly into panic. He was probably only gone 20 seconds, but it felt like 20 hours. And he finally came back in the room with another younger dude. And he said, hey, this is so-and-so. He's a resident here. Do you mind if I let him listen to your heart? It's not very often we get to listen to the heart of an endurance athlete. And I was like,
baby.
What
did you call me? You left the room.
Yeah. And so that was, I will never forget that story. It sounds so silly, but it was like for someone else to call me an athlete was, it was epic.
That's huge. That's huge. And the greatest part about this is, when I get to run races, I'm always at the back of the pack, and the best stories come out from there. But not a lot of times those stories get told.
Yeah.
That's why I love your story.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I trained with Ian Sharman. I mean, he's a world-class elite ultra runner. And he said something while we were training similar to that, where he said, if I'm spectating at an ultra marathon, my favorite times to be at the finish line to watch the finishers is the first hour of people who finish and the last hour before the cutoff, because that's when the people who have a story are finishing. And I was like, oh yeah, 100%.
So now take me back to when you started, because it doesn't just go from you reading the trail magazine to, hey, Leadville, here I come. There's a lot of probably training, heartache, mental fatigue during that. How did you even start on that journey? Because you said you're not a self-proclaimed athlete, but I believe you're an amazing athlete. But how did you start on that journey? Because I think a lot of people have that struggle of that first step, the third step, the 10th step. How'd you do that?
Yeah, it's the hardest part. Hands down for me, that was the hardest part, because when I first started, I couldn't run a quarter of a mile without taking a break. And it was really challenging to keep pushing myself a little bit further each time. I really rely on kind of ridiculous, seemingly unattainable goals in order to stay motivated. So I started with a 20-mile trail race as my first goal. And I spent a few months training for that, and I barely finished. As is my Clydesdale style, I came through the finish line a matter of minutes before the cutoff. And I
Hey,
spent
you paid for the whole race, so you wanted to make sure you got all the time,
to
right?
get my money's worth, right? Yeah,
Yeah, we get it.
exactly. And so I spent, I think, 3 or 4 months ramping up to 20 miles. And to be quite honest, I wasn't ready for it at all. I should not have probably even tried it, but I did finish, and I was instantly, I was like, oh, okay, well, let's do a 50K next. So, 4 months later, I did a 50K, and then 6 months later, I did a 50 miler, and the 50 miler was the sort of my litmus test. At that point, I had the idea for the film. I had the idea of running a 100 miler, but I was having a hard time committing for obvious reasons. And I said, I'm going to do a 50 miler. And if I can finish it before the time cutoff, we'll pull the trigger on a 100 miler. And I did the 50-mile endurance challenge in the Marin Headlands, just north of San Francisco. And again, I finished just minutes before the cutoff. And that's when things escalated really quickly. I knew if I was going to try to run a 100-miler, I needed help. I needed a trainer. I needed to, accommodate for the 23 hours of running I was going to be doing each week. And so that's when things really kind of started to escalate quickly. And it dominates your life. Anyone who's trained for a 100-miler or even a 50-miler knows that it takes a lot of time on top of the emotional commitment. It takes a lot of your time. I was single, no children. I don't know how people who are trying to maintain relationships and raise children do it, but somehow they all seem to manage it.
So 2 questions came to my head when you were talking. Is the first one, when you were talking about that you weren't prepared for that first 20 miler, was it that you didn't think that you were prepared because you were the fear of it? Because I think that's a lot of people were like, oh, I'm never going to be ready for that. They look at, these 100-mile races or, half Ironmans or things like that. And they say, oh, I'm never going to be ready for it. But were you happier, I guess you could say, that you went after it, even though you didn't feel you were fully prepared?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy I went for it, but I was literally physically unprepared for it. My mom had passed away. She passed away probably about 6 weeks before the run. So my training at the end was just completely derailed. So, I mean, I literally wasn't ready for it. And I finally, I decided that, considering the reason I had started doing it, and she was so excited about it too. She, when she was, coherent in the hospital, she knew that I was doing running, and she was, so excited about it.
Oh,
so I decided
awesome.
I had to do it. If it hadn't been for that, I probably would have not done it because I just, my training got derailed. I don't think I had done more than maybe like an 11-mile long run before that. And I just wasn't ready, but I managed to pull it out.
I love that, though. You pulled it out. You did it under extreme stressful circumstances. That's a huge, huge win. I love the quote that you say. One of your favorite quotes, kind of that led you say in the movie that led you to this, is the Mae West quote of,
yeah.
You say it because it's your quote.
Well, yeah, it's not mine. It's Mae West, but Mae West said, "You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough."
I love that.
And that's really, I think, I felt like it really summed up what I wanted this whole film to be about. It doesn't have to, the message isn't, oh, you need to run 100 milers or you need to do something this ridiculous. It's simply that, that thing you've always wanted to do, that thing that you've been putting off, that thing that hasn't been convenient to try. Now's the time. Because, my mom was only 58. She had tons of things planned, and she didn't get a chance to do them. So if there's something, now is the time, like right now.
I love that. You can go to jjb.life and find out more. When you're going through that 100-miler, I can only imagine, having done some races, I can only imagine this is your first 100-miler. The number of stories, how many times did you want to quit during that?
uh, I don't know. I certainly have never counted that high. I mean, a gazillion times. I mean, every time I ran. I mean, there's so many ups and downs. I mean, anytime I run more than 3 or 4 miles, I experience at least 37 different emotions, and it's just such a roller coaster. I think it was a really useful moment for me when I learned to not react to those extremes. When I learned that usually every run is going to have at least one period of time when it's awful, when it hurts, when it's not fun, when you're grumpy, when any normal sentient human would stop. It turns out that if you don't, usually those pains go away. You have a little snack and your mood changes. And that was really big for me when I realized that, you don't have to quit every time it's uncomfortable or not fun, because it's temporary.
Now, there's one thing, I watched a speech of yours. There's one thing that didn't hurt and is always good on you. And what is that?
Oh, my calves. They're exceptional. They're the only thing I have. My grandma used to say, if you've got it, flaunt it. And that's the only thing I have to flaunt. So I'm very confident in my calves.
I love that. That was hilarious. I was watching. I was like, I always play the game of what doesn't hurt. Like my eyelids, my ears. But I would love to have the calves.
Well, I don't think I can say they didn't hurt, but they still looked good even when they were hurting.
I love it. So now the movie, and I want to kind of transition from the movie to what you're doing now, which is speaking and comedy. And, I love the combination of the two. Tell me more about what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, I've always been an actor, comedian type, focusing more on stand-up lately, and that's part of where the idea came from for the film. The film is half documentary, following the whole journey, and then half stand-up / storytelling about the whole experience. And after the film was released, I started getting asked to do more public speaking, and I realized that. With my comedy, I always felt like it was more powerful, even if it was some silly poop joke. I always felt like it was more powerful if there was a story behind it, more substantial meaning than just a silly punchline. And I think my set in the film hopefully kind of illustrates that. I love my favorite thing in a movie or anything is when absolute just emotional devastation, when the film has just pushed you to the point where you just have tears running down your face, and then they slap you across the face with some sort of humorous moment and release all of that tension that they've built. I love that. I love having comedy and tragedy just slammed right up against each other. And I've realized that, while I'm a mediocre comedian, that love of having those two things together translates really well to public speaking, motivational speaking. And so I'm really, really excited about, these new opportunities that have been popping up. And it's, there's so many lessons from ultra running that can inform talks. But I think, without question, perseverance, not quitting is probably the one at the top of the list for me. So the talk that I've been giving most is titled "Smart Enough to Start, Dumb Enough Not to Quit." And I think in order to finish any 100-miler, you've got to be smart enough to start, but dumb enough not to quit.
I love that. That's great advice in life too.
I think so.
I love it. And you say you're a mediocre comedian, but I do not see any asterisks anywhere on the comedian side of your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So it says full-fledged comedian.
Well, what's a comedian even? I don't know. During COVID, gosh, I haven't performed in a club in, I don't know, a year and a half, longer.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's got to be tough. But I mean, it's great to be able to have, you know, a film like this where people can see both sides of the coin. So when you were going through that 100 miles, were there points where you got to laugh at yourself? Were there any stories of where you got to use that humor, that side, to be able to throw those endorphins into the mix and say, okay, now I can keep going?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, there was one specific instance. I think it was like mile 63-ish, something like that. And that's a dark time in any 100-miler. You know, literally the sun goes down, and it's hard to, at least for me, it's hard to adequately explain the like emotional. I don't mean to over dramatize it by calling it depression, but I mean there is a like it's a very down time. Can't see anything. It gets cold. The night is very rough, and on top of that, your body's falling apart at that point. And at 63 miles, I left the aid station, and I insisted on taking 2 huge handfuls of food with me, 2 huge styrofoam cups with, I don't remember what was in it, food. And I took off, and I was just pissed. I was angry. I was over it. I wasn't ready to quit, but I was not in a great mind space. And just a few miles out of that 60-mile aid station, I fell. I cooked my foot on a root, and it wasn't even like a stumble where I could maybe try to catch myself. Right. I just slammed down. And I remember like mid-fall just thinking like, do I save myself because my chest is about to slam against the ground, or do I save this food? And I mean, anyone who knows me knows that I saved the food over my body. Yeah. And when I hit the ground, I just let out the most awkward guttural, like, sound. And I wasn't immediate. It took me about 15-20 seconds to get up and realize that I was okay. And then I immediately just started cackling at myself because I realized how unfortunate it was that nobody else was around me and got to watch and enjoy me making that gross guttural sound as I slammed against the ground. And it turned out the next morning, I guess it would have been 2 mornings later, I went to urgent care because I had some blister issues that I needed help with. And I was having a hard time breathing. And it turned out I had fractured one of my ribs when I fell.
Are you kidding? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know at the time. It was about the last 10 miles I started to kind of not have trouble breathing, but my breathing felt like labored. And I just thought, oh, well, this is what happens when you run 90 miles. But it didn't go away the next day. And my sister, she was like, wait, didn't you say you fell? And I was like, oh, yeah, I did. And it kept getting worse. So we went to check it out. And there's nothing you can do for it. It sounds a lot more dramatic than it is. You just literally just wait it out and it heals. But yeah.
What food did you save? That's the more important question.
Oh, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I am such a big dude that I have to eat like food. Like I can't run on gels and stuff. I mean, maybe for like 15 miles, but I have to have like meals. I don't remember exactly. I did the calculation afterward. I think I burned somewhere between like 34 and 36,000 calories running that 100-miler. I mean, I'm huge. I'm 6'2". I'm a big guy. I'm already allotted like 2,800 calories per day. But it was, I'm sure it was probably some sort of like dehydrated backpacking meal. That's usually what I lean to on those things. It was probably the Louisiana red beans and rice backpackers pantry, if I had to guess. And not sponsored. I just live off that stuff.
Oh, I love it. Hey, it's such an honor to have you on today, and people need to go to jjb.life and find out more. I always end all of my segments the same way with 3 questions, and I'm going to ask you. I don't give them ahead of time because you know what? You sweat during a 100-miler, so you can sweat now too. All right, here's the first question. Now, what would be your one big suggestion or advice that you tell to your 18-year-old self?
Do things you don't think you're supposed to do.
I love
like
that.
Run 100 miles. or move to New York and pursue a comedy career, or any of the other foolishly risky things I've done. Do things you don't think.
That is great advice. I love that. All right, here's the second one. With people that are going through all these challenging and hard times, and not just now, but throughout their lives, what would you say would be 2 daily habits? It can be in the morning or in the evening that you would say that they should incorporate into their lives to be able to start living forward.
I think 5 minutes of mindfulness every morning, and I am maybe 50 to 60% successful at this, but I think it can't be understated how useful it is for me just to think about my day for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be proper meditation. Just
Right.
to sit in silence doing nothing for 5 minutes really gives me a good start to the day. And second, do things for other people. That brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction, especially, this year there's been not always a lot of that. But you can do nice things for people, even if it's just words, even if it's just letting someone know, that they're important or valued. I think that ends up doing just as much for you as it does for them.
I love that. I was worried that you were going to say save the sandwich or something like that.
No.
I love it. I think saving the sandwich is important. All right, this last one's kind of fun because we get them all over the board. So if you could have coffee with 3 people that could be living or deceased at a firehouse coffee table, or at a firehouse table, which means that everything is on the table. Anything that you want to talk about, you can talk about. Who would it be and why? It's always a challenging one.
Yeah, this is a hard one. So I would say Jesus. I'm not particularly religious, but I think I just want to chat with him. I just want to chat with him really, really badly. My mom, I think, she passed away 8 years ago, and I would love to chat with her as an adult and say, well, hey, how were things really?
Yeah.
What was this really like? I remember how it was for me, but what was it like for the adults in the room?
Yeah.
Oh, a third one.
You'd be surprised, but a lot of people have picked Jesus. It's funny.
I believe it. The last one, this one might seem a little weird. I'm going to say William Clark of Lewis and Clark. I am an armchair Lewis and Clark expert. If you have any burning questions about Lewis and Clark or the core of discovery, I can probably answer them. But I think he was just such I don't know if I can curse. He was such a badass, and I would love to know more. The one thing I will share with you is that their encounters with the Native Americans were like textbook perfect, and that they were almost entirely amicable. They treated them with respect. Such a really inspiring example for how we could have
what we could have been,
what we could have been, and it really went to shit. but I do think it's really inspiring how they conducted themselves with a lot of class and a lot of grace, and I admire that. So I'd love to.
I love that. That's a perfect 3 right there. Now, here's my question for you. Would you go? Isn't there a trail, the Lewis and Clark Trail?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I keep saying that I want to. I don't know if any producers are listening. I really want to pitch an idea for a show where myself and some other dude retrace their journey, because it really is one of the most engaging, enthralling adventure stories, nonfiction adventure stories that you will ever hear. But yeah, I really want to retrace their journey. You know, they took the Missouri as far as they could, and then they got out and went the rest of the way. And then on the way back, they split up. They wanted to kind of take different courses. So Lewis and Clark both went different routes. So yeah, there's a number of trails once you get past the end of the Missouri River.
See, I think the Ginger and the Fireman could do it.
Let's do it. Let's get there, Rob. Let's go.
I love it. It could be a comedy show as well as, entertaining and all sorts of things. I love it. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been such an inspiration. I want people to make sure that they go to the movie is Once Is Enough. You can go to www.onceisenoughfilm.com, or you can go and find out more about Jeffrey at jjb.life. Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks for listening today. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.